The Ohio Department of Natural Resources estimates the spill killed more than 3,500 fish in surrounding waterways. Chickens have been found dead in their coops. Residents have reported sore throats, burning eyes, and respiratory problems. Surveillance footage also shows the train on fire about 20 miles before it derailed with hazardous chemicals as it passed through Salem, Ohio.
With concerns of the controlled burn come concerns about dioxins.
East Palestine Railroad derailment will have a significant negative impact on the health and well-being of the residents for decades, and there is almost zero media attention. We need congressional inquiry and direct action from Pete Buttigieg to address this tragedy.
There have been so many moments where residents are unassured and then reassured. It's taken a toll, and that's why some of them turn to Brockovich and other non-governmental figures for answers.
The communities that these products are running through, they should be made aware of what's going through their backyard. It shouldn't be a mystery as to what's inside the tank car.
In fact, Norfolk Southern has had 111 freight train accidents in the last year, 125 the year prior, making them one of the worst in terms of safety.
This isn't a normal event. And we really haven't seen anything like it in the United States, and probably not something like it since 2013, as you know, when we had the Quebec train derailment and explosion in Lac Megantic.
What cocktail of chemicals went into that burn pit? We know it was predominantly vinyl chloride because those were the cars that were breached. Okay, how long did it sit there? How much seeped into the groundwater table or into the Beto zone during the burn? What did they turn into when they burned?
A disaster occurred in East Palestine, Ohio. Around 50 cars were derailed from a Norfolk Southern freight train on the 3rd of February, 2023. Around 20 of these cars had hazardous materials on board when it careened off the tracks after suffering a broken axle. Some of the rail tankers contained vinyl chloride, which was at risk of chemical explosion. Crews carried out a controlled burn of the substance to prevent a blast, but still sent noxious black clouds billowing across the region. The fire released phosgene, a gas deployed as a chemical weapon in the First World War, which causes eye irritation, dry burning throat, and vomiting.
Wow.
Look at all that.
Look at it.
It's all in the bottom of the creek bed. There are literally hundreds of dead fish, all coming from the one creek that's coming from the wreckage. That fish in this one is actually probably about a foot long, so it's not just the little ones. And then you see a bunch of little ones scattered around it. Little Beaver runs into Big Beaver, runs through our state park, and there's dead fish everywhere. I can't even begin to imagine the trickle effect we're going to have on the wildlife around here.
Leading up to the disaster, the Obama administration created a rule in 2015 which required high-hazard flammable unit trains to be outfitted with electronically controlled pneumatic brakes by 2023. In 2018, Trump's administration repealed the rule, claiming the cost of requiring these kind of brakes was not economically justified.
In June of 2016, a Union Pacific train towing a highly volatile type of oil derailed. It happened in the small Columbia River town of Mosier, just 10 minutes away from Hood River. An estimated 42,000 gallons of the crude oil spilled, sparking a massive fire that burned for 14 hours. The Federal Railroad Administration said electronic brakes could have reduced the severity of the derailment. The very brakes the Trump administration decided were no longer required.
However, this rule, if it remained in effect, would not have applied to that specific Norfolk Southern train, as it was not categorized as high hazard.
Vancouver Mayor Tim Levitt has made oil train safety a priority since many trains pass through his city every year.
Why would you want to roll back safety mechanisms that better ensure that our communities are going to be protected.
But industry representatives say the repeal of the brake rule is common sense, explaining that the brakes are not justified. Union Pacific told me that years of research showed these electronic brakes are not a feasible requirement because they don't deliver significantly greater benefits than the ones they have now. But Oregon and Washington lawmakers, including Ron Wyden, Jeff Merkley, Kate Brown, and Jay Inslee, are blasting the industry as well as the Trump administration, saying this decision endangers communities by making oil by rail transportation less safe.
Norfolk Southern has been criticized in recent years for failing to promote worker and rail safety, and now The Independent is reporting that the company chose to authorize a $10 billion stock buybacks for shareholders instead of investing in maintenance. OSHA found that Norfolk Southern also retaliated against its employees for reporting on work-related injuries and was ordered to pay $1.1 million to 3 whistleblowers wrongfully fired for reporting injuries. There were no fatalities in the incident, but more than 2,000 residents in the area were temporarily evacuated from the area due to health concerns.
There are a number of unsolved mysteries, very peculiar mysteries, when it comes to the East Palestine train derailment, the train crash. But one of the most mysterious is the pre-placed orange car that just happened to be sitting right next to where the train would crash. And both this pre-placed car and where the train would crash correspond directly, it seems, with Sulphur Run, which feeds into the Ohio River. The pre-placed orange car, which happened to align right with the first cars caught up in the crash, which also aligned right with the Sulphur Run waterway, which feeds into the Ohio River, and then later the Mississippi River and then the Gulf of Mexico. We can see this car engulfed in flames, fiercely burning. But why was this car here in the first place? And what are the odds that it's sitting right next to where this train crash would happen for months and months and months? And let's not forget the movie White Noise, which just came out and also seemed to have predicted this crash. Why was this car full of flammable material, seemingly, allowing it to catch fire? This makes no sense. I was able to find it on Google Earth, July 2022. And another data set shows it before the crash as well. And it lines up right with where this burning car is in respect to the train crash. Right next to the train crash. How does this make any sense? So let's dive into the mystery of the pre-placed orange car. The first cars left after the train crash were strewn right in front of these 2 drainage pipes, which are a pretty rare occurrence as far as these tracks go. I scrolled and panned along these railroad tracks for a while, and I couldn't find another example of these types of drainage pipes. And they seemingly connect with this reservoir, as you can see in this photo. So why would they have left this car right next to the tracks, in a position that would correspond directly with the East Palestine train crash? What was in this car? Why was it placed here? Why was it pre-placed at the exact location of the crash? And I also got this message the other day. Hold the Onion told me on Rumble, under one of my videos. The car in the ditch was not from this train. Using non-Google satellite images, I was able to see that the ditch car had been there since at least 5/27/2022. But it might have popped up sometime between the last date before then, the last snapshot before then, and 5/27. So the prior flyover was 1/5/2022, and then about 5 months later it was confirmed to be there. So we don't know when it popped up, but according to Hold the Onions, it was there from at least 5/27/2022, possibly longer. But one thing to note is there's surprisingly few photos and videos of this mysterious car from either before or after the crash. And this is one of the best views we get. This was taken on 2/6, I think, a few days after the crash, and we can see it lit up from an angle.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Bernie Sanders would confront the CEO of Norfolk Southern after the tragedy.
Mr. Shaw, you indicated in response to a question from the chairman that you, quote, "I'm committed to doing what's right," end quote. Well, I think all of us are committed to doing what's right, but the devil is in the details. Mr. Shaw, Wall Street, about a decade ago, in order to increase the profits they were earning in the rail industry, implemented a program called Precision Scheduled Railroading. The result of that is that Norfolk Southern reduced its workforce by almost 40% over 6 years. Meanwhile, in fact, Wall Street's goal was achieved. Profit soared for Norfolk Southern. You made over $3 billion in profits last year. I have been told by workers who work for your company and other rail companies that they are now being asked to do more work with fewer workers, and that includes safety inspections. So well before this disaster in East Palestine, we have been told about the potential safety hazards. Will you make a commitment right now to the American people that you will lead the industry in ending this disastrous precision scheduled railroading, which has slashed your workforce and made railroading much less safe? Yes or no, will you make that commitment?
Senator, I understand your concern, and I share that concern. And if you'll permit, I have a couple points on that. I became CEO in May of last year. Ever since that point, Senator, we've been on a hiring spree. The number of employees at Norfolk Southern today is 1,500 more than it was this time last year.
You'll forgive me, I don't mean to be rude. We just don't have a whole lot of time. Yeah, I understand that, but you will not deny what you're trying to do is rebuild from the massive layoffs that took place. My question back to you again. Wall Street, not the industry, imposed this on the industry. Wall Street said we're not making enough money. Cut workers, cut workers, cut workers, even if it endangers safety. My question to you, very simply, sir, will you lead the industry in doing away with precision scheduled railroading? That concept.
Senator, in December of last year, I charted a new course in the industry. And I said we're going to move away from a near-term focus solely on profits, and that we're going to take a longer-term view that's founded on our engagement with our craft employees who are so critical to our success. We were the first to pivot out of it.
All right, well, let me jump in again. I apologize for cutting you off here, but when you talk about your employees, the entire country, I think, was shocked to learn a number of months ago that your employees, rail workers, who work in a dangerous job in all kinds of weather, had zero paid sick days. Now, I know that is beginning to change, but I would ask you, given the fact that Norfolk Southern provided $10 billion in stock buybacks recently, can you tell the American people and your employees right now that in order to improve morale in your workforce, that you will guarantee at least 7 paid sick days to the 15,000 workers you employ? I do know you've made some progress. You increased paid sick days for some of your workers. Will you do what most Americans think is pretty obvious, that when you get sick, you get guaranteed paid sick days? Will you make that commitment right now to your entire workforce?
Senator, with our latest agreement with our employees, which included a historic 24% wage increase and access to premium healthcare benefits, we immediately pivoted to talking to each of our local...
I've been deeply involved. I introduced the amendment on the floor. I know the issue. But what I'm asking you right now, you provided paid sick days to some of your employees. I got it. Thank you. Will you now do it? What we get here in Congress. Our employees get sick, they get paid sick days. Will you make that commitment right now to guarantee paid sick days to all of your workers? That's not a radical demand. It really is not. Will you make that commitment, sir?
Senator, I share your focus on our employees. I will commit to continuing to discuss with them important quality of life issues with our local craft colleagues
In all due respect, you sound like a politician here, Mr. Shaw. It's not a deal. Paid sick days is not a radical concept in the year 2023. I am not hearing you make that commitment to guarantee that to all of your workers. Clearly, we should have that for every worker in America. I'm not hearing that commitment. Will you make that commitment, sir?
Senator, I'm committed to continuing to speak to our employees about quality of life issues that are important to them.
All right. Well, I'm chairman of the Health Education Labor Committee. We look forward to having that discussion. One last issue. You talked about covering...
Senator Graham, Senator Graham is waiting to ask it, so Bernie, if you just keep it really brief.
All right, last question. You talked about covering the needs of the people of East Palestine. Does that include paying for their health care needs? All of their health care needs?
Senator, we're going to do what's right for the citizens of East
What's
Palestine.
right is to cover their health care needs. Will you do that?
Everything is on the table, sir.
When the White House press corps asks if a cabinet secretary has the president's confidence, it is a very bad day for the cabinet secretary. And Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg has had a lot of bad days lately. He's over the FAA, and we've had 3 near crashes of major U.S. airlines in about 2 months, not to mention the Southwest Airlines meltdown over Christmas. Before that, the summer of misery when American and JetBlue didn't have enough pilots. Now comes the Norfolk Southern disaster. Even some Democrats have had enough. Do you think it's fair to blame him for all of these transportation problems? Or is it you got to blame President Biden because Mayor Pete works for him, and what Mayor Pete thought he was going to be talking about was racist roads?
Well, if I'm Biden, I want people to blame Pete, right? Like, that's the goal. That's entirely the goal. And just like on the border, I want people to blame Kamala Harris. I don't want to have to take any of the blame.
It took Pete over a week to respond. When the Secretary of Transportation finally did respond to the disaster, he claimed that there would be more derailments. This, in fact, came true as another train was derailed in Michigan.
But take a look down the track here, and you can see that there are a number of rail cars there that have actually gone over on their side. There are seven actual train cars that have gone off the track. Several of them are on their side. Now, Dave McAnally is the chief of the Van Buren Fire Department, and he is here to kind of give us the update. And Chief, we've had a couple of conflicting reports about what's out here, hazardous materials not, and so forth. So tell us a little bit about what you know about what they've been carrying here and what the status is out here.
There was only one car that had hazardous materials on it. It was liquid chlorine. The car was not affected in the incident, had no leaks, and it didn't come off the tracks, and has already been gone for about 45 minutes now. They've taken half the train away. The other half of the train here should be, or a good portion of this train should be gone in the other direction within the next hour, they're telling me Norfolk is. And then in about 6 to 8 hours, they should have the rest of the cars that you see there up on the tracks on their way.
This has been quite the sort of traffic snarl around here, and you're saying that should abate here shortly?
Yeah, hopefully within the next hour we'll have the 2 major crossings on this area of the township open, and the people can traverse. They can go through the city, or they can go to Hannon Road now to get around.
Talk about, I mean, we know what happened in Ohio a couple of weeks ago. Did that sort of go across your mind? And, you know, is there a plan for a township like Van Buren to be able to cope with something that could get out of hand?
Yeah, we have. We work very closely with Wayne County Emergency Management, Wayne County Homeland Security. We have stuff set up for something like that was going to happen. Those calls were made within minutes of us getting here, verifying that we didn't have those circumstances, situations.
So we're blessed in this one.
Yeah, it's almost like a non-incident per se, other than the traffic and some issues with the train. Yeah.
What's more shocking is Biden's actions after the disaster. Biden had taken it upon himself to shield Norfolk Southern from lawsuits involving the victims.
In the case against Norfolk Southern, the Biden administration is siding with the railroad in its conflict with a cancer-stricken former rail worker. A high court ruling for the rail company could create a national precedent limiting where workers and consumers can bring cases against corporations.
A group of environmental organizations called on Pete Buttigieg to act on a rail safety rule scrapped by the Trump administration. For 2 years, the Biden administration did nothing to re-implement the policy. There is plenty of blame to go around, But who is going to step up and solve this one?